I guess to the other members of the committee, is everybody cool with the agenda and the way that it is? Do we need to add or reorder or withdraw anything?
I'm fine with it.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question. We don't legally need to have minutes and approve minutes. Perhaps maybe because we're a committee and don't need to take minutes.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. Generally, minutes are not a legal requirement. It's just something that's up to the legislative body.
Okay, I was just wondering. So the regular agenda number 5, I'd like to introduce Mr. Bill Carnahan. He's our new interim CEO. I had a conversation with him last week. He's a pleasant gentleman. And take it away, Bill.
Well, thank you. Hello, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to come before the Community Advisory Committee and see how you folks interact and how you develop recommendations to the board. I suspect, like all the other things associated with SDCP, we're in the startup phases still. We don't have a lot of activity, but as we prepare to provide real service to customers, the fact that we are locally controlled and need to have our finger on the pulse of what's happening with our customers, you all will play a vital role in that, and you will have more and more to do as things go along. And so I appreciate getting to know you, getting to listen to you in terms of any concerns or thoughts or hopefully pluses of things we're doing right as we go along. And I look forward to working with you. One of the common traits of CCAs in general and entities that are locally controlled, like municipal electric utilities, it's the fact that the users actually own us and we're answerable to them, as compared to SDG&E, for example, who really answers to the PUC, which is how many 100 miles away from here. So it's important that we have a sense of what of the communication coming our way, so that you all can pick up on trends and concerns and ideas, pluses. We hope that you can generate things for us to think about. And likewise, we can use you all in our effort to outreach to the customers as well, making sure the message gets out that needs to get out there, and things that are important. We can't forget that our customers do have a choice. They can walk away from us anytime they want. So we have to perform. We have to be responsive. You all play a key and vital link in that. And I know the board appreciates your views. I appreciate your views as well. And I expect to spend some time with you all. We're an open book. We'll tell you or explain to you anything we're doing. And likewise, if you hear anything on the street or have any ideas, be sure then forward them to us, and we'll seriously consider them. I'll have to tell you, I admire folks who volunteer for public service, and it's particularly impressive to me when folks volunteer to be on an advisory committee, because you're not actually making decisions, but you're helping those who do by providing different insights. And sometimes that can be kind of a thankless job. And so I appreciate you all being willing to take the time to provide your expertise, your insights to us. And as we go along, we'll be developing, I think, a better working relationship with you all as we have more issues to talk about and things that need to be done. And so I hope to attend many more of your meetings so that we can develop that kind of a dialogue. And Eddie, I also appreciated the time that you spent with me getting acquainted, and I can tell the rest of the committee they're under very able leadership, and I appreciate your enthusiasm.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Bill. Does anybody have any questions for Bill? Hearing none. We'll move on to a presentation from Erica Morgan with the California Alliance for Community Energy. Erica, are you ready?
I am ready and I am here. I think that Sebastian is controlling my slides. There we go. Excellent. All right, so I want to begin also by thanking all of you for the opportunity to to meet with you today and to introduce the Alliance in a very important way. We really exist to serve and support you and people like you who are working in the context of community choice on behalf of their communities. So I'm going to take just a short minute, maybe 5 minutes, to introduce what we do and how we do it. And along the way, I want to both offer my congratulations to Mr. Carnahan. I look forward to working with you and appreciate what you just said about the importance of public service, particularly in a role like this and in a venue like this, and applaud Chair Price for his very astute observations about the uniqueness of community ties. These are all areas in which we operate as well. And as I said, exist to really explain, explore, and delve into this particular intersection of the community and community choice. So I'm going to start with this slide. The logos on this slide are 4 of the 7 members of the Alliance's governing steering committee. We work as a consensus. And include in this collage, if you will, in the upper left-hand corner, the San Diego Community Choice Alliance, Community Choice Energy Alliance, for which I serve as the steering committee representative from that group. So we also, with the Slow Climate Coalition, the East Bay Clean Power Alliance, and that's the local Clean Energy Alliance tucked in the back there. These groups are all also alliances themselves of activist individuals and allied organizations, all in their local communities. And they're all typical of our members. In addition, there are 3 other members on our steering committee who represent a different sort of subcategory of our members. They represent the working groups in their communities that are either working to form community choice entities or monitoring the community choice entities in which they have decided to participate. So in that case, the other 3 members represent Berkeley, Long Beach, and Santa Monica. And those are just a few of the areas where we have active pods, if you will, of members who are really participating indirectly in what you all do and in what your CCA does by asking questions and engaging and coming with their comments and coming with their concerns. So, all right, let me then ask that we go to the next slide. This is our mission. And as advocates, our mission really spells out what we seek to do. We are looking forward to creating and to helping to support and in many cases defend community choice programs, community choice entities that sponsor programs that bring tangible benefits to their communities. And by that, we certainly mean clean energy. We mean the environmental benefits that come from clean energy. But we also mean the social and economic and environmental justice benefits that these particular kinds of entities can bring. And we see it first in the form of several of the reasons that people voted to form San Diego Community Power, and that they wanted local control. They wanted clean energy, but they also wanted the chance to bring innovative clean energy projects close to home. So that's all in our mission: clean energy, local clean energy, environmental, economic, and social justice benefits. And none of these things need to come at the expense of the others. We are looking, and our members are seeking and supporting that all of these things are achieved by the community choice entities, and particularly the service to all communities, including those historically underserved customers who need to be at the heart of the discussion. So you all have a very important role in this, as has already been said. You serve your communities as conduits. And as such, you've probably already observed that service on the Community Advisory Council or Committee is about a lot more than just electrons. You've also seen that as we have a statewide collection of community choice agencies now, there are common denominators. There are things that we can observe of those. And some of those have to do with the relationships between the staffs, who often come out of utility backgrounds, and the customers and groups like yourselves who have specific needs about that. That's where we come in. You can basically think of us as an informal, almost like a professional development network or a resource for members of community advisory committees. As our members are monitoring and learning from and comparing notes about the things they see across the state, we can offer a lot of insight and perspective as you carry out your role on this committee. Let's go to the next slide, please. So my invitation is that you consider joining the Alliance. It's totally free. Our only membership obligation is that you be supportive of this mission. And the why to do this is really clear, because we all want community choice agencies to be roaring successes. We want all the voters to be extremely glad that they voted to do this. And how do we do that? We do it in a lot of different ways. We basically explain how things look from the perspective of the customer of the CCA to all these various entities, including the proceedings. We're in, Public Utility Commission proceedings, making our voice heard. We do position papers like the one there on community-driven energy reliance, energy resilience, and special publications like the one on the right. All of these are informed by our network of members, what they see and what they want to see. So in closing, here's my contact information. Please email me anytime, visit our website, ask any questions you want. We are there to explain, to support, to inform, to educate on a whole host of issues that are particularly arising in the community choice ecosystem as it's grown up here in California. And we look forward to being a resource for you as well. Sebastian, if we have time for any questions, I'm totally open for questions.
Yeah, I think we have a few minutes, but that would be Chair Pice's decision. Yeah.
Yes, please. Hopefully we have some questions for this young lady.
Thank you, Erica. So you're encouraging us to join the organization. I guess my question is, do we join as the Community Advisory Committee, or are you asking SDCP, the CCA, to join yours?
No, that's a very good question. I'm sorry I didn't make that clear enough. This is for individuals. Primarily, we have a lot of allied organizations, and they participate mostly through the members themselves who are engaged and who join. So it is an invitation to all of you as individuals, and then you can feed the information that you learned back into the committee as you choose to, as you see fit.
Thank you.
Okay.
We've got a ton of stuff on our website, so on a whole bunch of issues that are relevant to your life in this venue. Our two big campaign priorities for 2020 have been community-driven energy resilience and getting rid of, sunsetting that wonderful four-letter acronym you've learned to love, the PCIA. That's a big one, and it's going to get, we're going to hear a lot more about that in 2021.
Not a question, but a comment. Thank you, Erica, for all the work that you've been doing. It's been very impressive, and you're such a help during the community choice energy fight here in San Diego. So I really appreciate you continue to being a resource and a conduit and a connection for us with the California Alliance for Community Energy. So just thank you so much for presenting today and being here.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate the invitation.
I'll echo that. Erica was one of the first people who explained what community choice energy was to me almost 10 years ago, and she was helping lead the fight. So definitely appreciate you being here today and all your efforts to help us get to where we're at.
Thank you. And thank you all for what you do. It's not always easy, because you are, as one person once described it, sort of like the insulator on the wire between the wire and the pole. You know, you are there in the middle, and you have to interpret what's going on and figure out what to do about it. And if we can help in that, we're delighted to do so.
Erica, does the Alliance have a lobbyist or somebody on staff who is full-time?
No.
Okay.
No to the full time and
Okay.
no to the lobbyist. What we do have, though, are members, are activists who pay attention and write letters and submit comment. And then in instances where there is what we would call the inside game happening under the hood in Sacramento, we partner with a lot of other organizations. Often it's the CCAs themselves and their trade association, CalCCA, but often it's the community groups that dare to say things that CCAs sometimes don't really feel like they can say out loud in a legislative setting. But you know what? The activists and the community members can say those things. So we organize all of that, provide materials that are explanatory, point them toward their legislative, toward their electeds, both in the legislature and in their local areas, including the members on their CCA boards, and, you know, help them say things.
Thanks.
Who was that question from? Actually, I couldn't really tell you.
David from La Mesa.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think that's it for me.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your presentation and appreciate the questions coming from the committee. Sebastian, are you going to do the overview of the sponsorships and guiding outline?
Yes, Chair. And before I move forward, I also wanted to say that several years ago, I also met with Erica for her to teach me about community choice. So I also thank you for stopping by and appreciate your, the effort that you've put in from day zero. So thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing this so I can pull up the PDF and we can zoom in better. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So thank you, Chair. With the help of civilian who are also on this call, we developed these initial guiding statements to help SDCP determine sponsorship requests that would come from the community in now and in the not too distant future. These are, like I said, more of guiding statements, and we want to see if you guys have any input, any suggestions or questions, and take it from there. Like I said, you guys are part of the community, and these are sponsorship events for the community, so we want to hear from you all.
What my eyes were drawn to was the attendance parameters. What does that mean? Because, you know, like a member city community event and you want 5,000 people, what does that mean? I don't know what the population of La Mesa is, but it's
right,
much more than 5,000 people.
Yeah, and
65,000.
But I'm just saying, you know, that those look like some pretty lofty numbers to be a requirement for support.
Okay, so you're thinking more of lower numbers for the member city community events?
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe 500 or 250, and you know, I'd like other people to weigh in that have actually done events and knows, you know, the market in your respective cities. But in my humble opinion, those are some pretty lofty numbers.
Is this, I have a question, Secretary Webb. If, are these just guidelines, or are these numbers that people want us to hit? Or, you know, if you could clarify that. I mean, Imperial Beach has 25,000 residents or whatever it is, so.
Yeah, yeah. These are guidelines mainly to help staff move forward with these requests. I definitely see Eddie's point of the member city community events. Maybe there's a struggle to hit 5,000. Say, for example, once COVID is over, hit 5,000 in-person attendance, and then perhaps social media outreach of 5,000 people. But this is what we're here for, to hear from you all and see what makes sense.
For example, in Imperial Beach, we don't have there's no meeting space. I suppose possibly at one of the high schools, but we still, you know, could not get that many people in that facility when COVID is over and we can meet. You know, we can certainly, you know, hold events at the pier and places like that where we might have a few hundred, but, you know, and we'll do, of course, Tom and I will work together and, you know, we'll do as many as we can. But they might have to be broken down into pockets, you know.
And that completely makes sense on, you know, what community facilities are in your city. And so that's great feedback. Thank you.
Also,
I just want to clear up the intent of this is to sponsor events that are already happening, correct? This isn't a call for, I just want to clarify that this is a guideline for sponsoring community events that are already occurring and showing up with a booth or table or something like that, right?
Yes, so
Okay.
yeah, events that are already setting themselves up on their own, and then they just want us to provide them with some funds.
Sebastian, if you'd like, I'd be happy to chime in on this one as well.
Please.
Hey everyone, Sean from Civilian. Good to see everybody. So yes, to clarify, the intent of this document was to really provide guidelines. You know, the Community Power has set aside a certain amount of budget for sponsorships throughout the year. And what we were hoping to do was provide some sort of relative guidelines so that as they're making decisions or as opportunities show up, you know, because I know Sebastian and Cody get emails all the time. Hey, we've got this event coming up. Are you interested in sponsoring? We're just trying to give a framework. You can't hear me?
You're fading in and out.
Okay, I will try to stay close. Sorry. Basically, it's guidelines for staff to evaluate sponsorship opportunities that arise. So this is not about creating new events. This is about prioritizing the opportunities that come up. And what we want to do as the next step on this is, if the framework makes sense to everyone on the civilian team, we're actually going to start doing some homework and kind of dog-earing some events that we know are coming up next year, that we say, okay, let's circle that one. We want to do that in May because it's close to the commercial rollout. We want to do that in December because it's close to the residential rollout. So we want to try to plan ahead as much as we can on that, but we didn't want to go through that exercise until we kind of expose this group to the overall kind of like scaling of all of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The audio.
Sean, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Vice Chair Hammond.
It doesn't look like on here it specifies if San Diego Community Power would be having a booth. I led a team for several years that put on over 100 educational solar presentations. We also did a lot of sponsorships and attended events. And I feel like being there in person is a key part. Otherwise, there's a huge list of sponsors and your money's, I think, kind of lost, especially when you have bigger sponsors that might be putting up $25,000, have the big recognition there. So just seeing, I'm assuming one of the bullets that's there's talking about beyond the event itself, that might be included, but I would highly recommend having a booth, and if there's staff that can be there to explain what it is in person.
That's a really great point. And that's one level deeper than we went here. I would say as a general best practice, we want to try to squeeze every activation we can out of these sponsorships. So whether it's a booth, whether it is space in their email communications or their program, or if it's a video that's running. We want to dig past just having a logo on a welcome PowerPoint slide of a presentation, because again, we're not throwing Sempra money at these events. We want to get as much as we can and interaction and engagement with the community within them. So that's a really great point. I think what we'll want to do is, once these opportunities come up, we'll talk to their kind of partnership team to see how much we can get out of it in addition to just a sponsorship.
And I have one more follow-up question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So for us to give feedback on this budget, I'd also be interested in learning what, assuming you guys have a budget for our own education, because it's possible instead of sponsoring events, 25,000, you could do a set of mailers to some of these residents explaining what the program is and directly getting in front of them. I wouldn't recommend it during election season, but something they will touch versus a sponsorship. If it's a virtual event right now, you don't know if they're actually going to see a video or see something. So that 25,000 might be better spent doing direct marketing to ratepayers.
That's a good point. Sebastian, that makes me wonder if in a future session with this group, we should do kind of an overall, like an overview of all the community outreach that we want to do, the materials, the city sessions, the listening sessions, just to kind of give like an overall scape of how many channels we want to use for public education above and beyond just the sponsorships.
And this is Cody. If I could interrupt really quickly, I'm only going to be with you all for a few more minutes, but we do have additional budget for our own outreach. So I think that was covered, but just keep that in mind that this is just money set aside for sponsorship. So other people holding events that they're already doing that we could just be a sponsor. And this is similar to what, SDG sponsors events and other organizations too. So just giving a little bit of that context.
Thank you, Cody. And to circle back to your question, Sean, I think that'd be a great idea. I want to hear from the group and from Chair Price and everyone else, especially as we just heard from Anna about the lack of community spaces. There are things that I don't know, and we want everyone's feedback on, especially as we plan this outreach. So that sounds good to me, but what does everyone else think?
Well, I'm also curious as to the $3,000 for San Diego community events and $1,750 for other member city community events. And it was hard for me to ask because I'm representing San Diego and we get the lion's share of that money. However, in the share of equality, I was just wondering how you came up with those numbers.
In essence, sorry.
Go ahead, Sean.
I would just say that was a numbers game, a volume of accounts kind of game. And it wasn't, we could certainly, and I would definitely defer to this group and to Sebastian on how we want to split that 10K. I think we were looking at, again, volume of use in the member cities. In no way was it to, truly prioritize one versus the others. It was just more a means of number of accounts that we're looking at. Yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Have a question or feedback?
Yeah, please, Ed.
Thank you very much. Maybe an outright suggestion or simply feedback. Is it possible to add another criterion or simple consideration that essentially sort of goes to diversity? For example, maybe under the bullet point dealing with the target audience would be maybe a consideration or criterion. Does the event help fulfill encompassing reach out to diverse communities? And that could be as far ranging as disadvantage, linguistically, or even geographically, ensuring that we have a balance and have in fact hit all of the member cities, and then as well again as hitting particular niche communities as well.
I love that. I think that's a great suggestion.
Exact same reaction. Love it as well.
Who else is on the call? Did everybody ask a question? Right, make a statement, Sebastian?
To be honest, I wasn't keeping track. I was just responding to questions. But if anyone
Would
has,
anybody else like to ask Civilian anything or make a comment or suggestion? They're pretty open to comments and suggestions.
I did clarify one thing. Even though we don't have a big indoor space here in IB, we have, on a normal year, we have quite a few events. We have marathons that come through here. We have the Sun and Sea Festival, which draws huge crowds, and the dog surfing competition every year. So those are big events where, yes, in fact, even a lot of Chula Vista folks come over this way, and people from around the county, to where we could.
In San Diego, people go to your Chili Fest too, just so you know. Just so you know.
And that way, we could even do a collective community booth or something, but have a presence there. So I think that would work real well for us here.
And that's one thing I would also clarify in case it didn't come across earlier was, though we're saying they are city events, that doesn't necessarily mean it's an event put on the city to talk about city business. It's not as if we're saying, we're going to sponsor a city council meeting. These are lifestyle, family events, things that are going on in your community where we want to reach out to and engage with people on their own terms. So the Sand and Sea, the dog surfing, those are all right in the bullseye of what we were thinking.
And they get real excited when they have local sponsorship, so that would be great.
And I'd like to volunteer for the Chili Fest in Imperial Beach, just so you know.
I think I know one San Diego resident who goes to it.
Definitely.
Sean, would it be helpful if we have community events in mind to reach out to you or pass those along to Sebastian? Obviously, events this next year might be canceled, but if there's any that we think would be helpful, can we pass that along?
Yes, and we're actually going to cover that a little bit later on in the agenda when we go through the communications guide. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that was kind of a segue to my question. During, because of the current state of the planet now, and Zoom calls and all this kind of stuff, how have you thought about how to market to different organizations, whether it's city organizations or cultural organizations that already have a Zoom call in effect, in marketing to them? And if so, would there be any compensation for them associated with that?
Yes, absolutely. So what we've done is we've started to pull together a list of all those organizations, whether they are folks that are mission aligned naturally with the CCA, or if they're just other respected community leaders and organizations that we know and we have relationships with. And we're starting to look at what the different levels of engagement would be with them. So with some folks, we're going to schedule one-on-one briefings with the leadership group and give them materials, arm them with materials they can deploy they can send out to their groups, their constituents. In other situations, we may find ourselves trying to get on the agenda of a monthly meeting and actually presenting SDCP's case on their behalf. So it's kind of, we're building a tiered system to try to make sure that everyone who wants and is amenable to hearing our story can hear the story. It's just probably, it's not necessarily realistic for us to get on every single agenda of every organization. So we're kind of figuring out like what the continuum looks like on that. And to your other point about compensation, we are looking into a grant program for community-based organizations that would probably roll out closer to the residential rollout, sort of toward the end of next year, but especially for harder to reach niche communities, we may lean into that grant program to help, because these folks are just doing great work and they've done great work for SDCP throughout this process. So that's on the horizon as well.
Good. Any more questions?
Well, I just want to say, Sean, I think you've got a problem with your computer microphone, because I've been watching, and when you got closer, it was a lot better and we didn't miss much, but the thing seems to have this little intermittent dropout and then suddenly come back in. It has nothing to do with, moving your head around or, it's worse if you're back far, but I don't know, maybe time for either a new computer or at least for a tune-up on this one.
I'm plugged into this like multi-screen thing here at the office, so I might just move locations and I'm gonna work on that in between topics. We'll see if we can fix that.
Okay, are we ready to move on? Because we're in between topics, so we're going to give the gentleman a little time to fix his audio. And move on. Agenda item, I'm trying to find it. Do we have to vote on something, right?
Not on this one, Chair.
Okay, I see what it is now. Okay.
Yeah, but I did want to let you know that Tom has his hand raised.
Okay, Tom.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been listening in since the beginning on my phone. I just didn't have a whatever it takes to let you guys know that I was here. But anyway, yeah, I'm in a club that sponsors, that puts on these. First of all, I wanted to thank Erica. That was great. I actually have been a member of the Alliance, I think, since before I was involved with this committee. And yeah, I really appreciate the fact that they are a wonderful resource that all of us advisors can access. But yeah, we put on a large event in Imperial Beach. I've been told it's the second largest event, public event, and Civilian will definitely be one of our sponsors. So thank you to Civilian as well. And I just want to let you guys know that I am here and participating. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Where are we at now?
Moving on to the next item, let me stop sharing this.
Sean, are you ready? Have you gotten?
I don't know, Eddie. You tell me. Can the folks hear me? Am I audible?
Yes. Touchdown.
All right, take it away.
Okay. Curious, before I go too far into this, how much of the folks on today's call observed the board meeting a couple weeks ago? I didn't know if it was 100% or some folks did, some folks didn't. Okay, so I will go through this fairly briefly, but definitely we'll have time for questions as we get through it. I also have Kim on the line. She's the one who was really the architect for all of our messaging. So if you want to dig in, you have any questions, I know Jen's going to have some questions given the space that we all work in. So we're happy to take those as we get through it. And she's probably going to be, Kim's going to be the right one to answer those questions. So over the past couple months and since we last met, we've taken a lot of the information you and other groups have provided and pushed it forward. In terms of a quick agenda, I think we can go to the next slide. Perfect. We're going to review the messaging platform. We're going to review the brand identity, which went in front of the board recently and was approved. And I hope you're all going to be excited about it, because we are. And then Kim is going to take you through our communications guide, which I mentioned earlier is kind of that framework for how we can distribute and provide information to each other, so that when you hear something from the community, you're armed not only to respond to them, but also to escalate it back to community power, because we need to keep those lines of communication open if we're going to succeed at this thing. So let's start with the approach. I think you saw probably an iterative version of this before, but I think it's just important to make sure every time we talk about these kind of things like brand development and messaging platforms, that everything we do is very linear and very process oriented. We do a lot of research and we have a lot of listening sessions, and we look at the landscape and the competition and everything that all kind of informs step one, which then informs step two, and then informs step three. So every time we're getting closer and closer to that bullseye, because a lot of times when you're building something like a logo for a new organization, it can be a subjective process, or it can be a subjective decision. We try to build it in an objective process to get there. So I just want to kind of reiterate that we've been down a lot of steps with this, with your input, with the board's input, with city staff's input, with the SDCP team, the staff's input, kind of all over the place in terms of gathering insight. So let's start with the message platform. Okay, so as we build out the message platform, we have certain goals that we want to achieve in it, because this is going to be a multi-layered story that has to be adaptable. It's based on who we're talking to, what the context we're talking to them is, and what's most important to them, to get that relationship built. So obviously we want to support the business goals and objectives. We want to minimize opt-outs. We want to maximize opt-ups. We want to build a foundation for the future to build for San Diego Community Power. It's really important as a new organization that we establish credibility and trust. A lot of the research that we did in the other CCAs that have been successful, what made them successful was building that credibility and trust from the beginning. So understanding that this is a new space that a lot of people just aren't aware of at all. We want to show the community that we've got this. You know, this organization is part of a tried and proven model for CCAs, and this particular team at San Diego Community Power will handle the energy well. We also want to shift perceptions from the current state to the desired state. So we talked about this last time we met. I know a lot of the perceptions for SDCP right now are just an empty space. People don't know what a CCA is. They don't really know what SDCP is. So we want to make a great first impression with them. And we also want to erase or at least soften any pre-existing perceptions they may have based on things like the Clear the Air campaign or the work that was done before the JPA was approved and came into formation. And then, mitigate the impact of the worst perceptions and plan around the barriers. So another part of this is, because this is a two-way dialogue, we have a lot of things we want to say, but we also want to keep our ears open because there may be new arguments that we don't know yet because they haven't debuted yet. So that's another part of why it's important for us to keep our ears to the ground with the community. Is if, for example, you're out there talking to the community and you hear an interesting sort of piece of pushback or an argument you hadn't heard before, we're going to kind of rely on you to echo that back to us, so that we can understand where it's coming from, how meaningful it is, and if there's a proper counter argument, we want to arm you with that. So that's what I mean when I say two ways. We want to learn from you and have you be a kind of our listening, our lightning rods, as well as pushing stuff out through you. So next we go through what we call a kind of an umbrella positioning statement. So this statement really encapsulates everything that we want to get across in our story. As a neighborhood not-for-profit, SDCP provides future-focused energy choices and a clear path to 100% renewable energy for today, and as a legacy for future generations. This is the thing that goes at the top of the entire. This is the treehouse in one statement. Everything is going to fall below there. So what we do is we start with a big statement like this that encapsulates our ethos in one sentence, and then we start to layer down further and further as we go through it. So the next slide you'll see, we have that umbrella positioning statement that we then break out into these four what we call messaging zones. And each of these, think of it as a topic or an area, an argument that it's all going to have sub arguments to it as well. This is very sort of structured and hierarchical. But the four main areas or topics that we think fall within that are the fact that SDCP is a customer-driven choice. There's something so powerful about giving someone choice. And when I say choice, I don't mean a choice, I mean choice. The notion of choice is a very powerful thing, and we find that across a lot of different verticals. It's very future-focused. It's pragmatic and proven, and it's a neighborhood not-for-profit. So what I'm going to do in the next couple of minutes here is I'm going to dig down even further into that. But this is, again, we do some, we look at a message hierarchy. This is that high-level hierarchy right there. So next slide, we're going to dig down a little bit deeper. Okay, when we say SDCP represents customer-driven choice, what does that mean, and why is that actually a good thing? Why does that matter to me as a consumer or as a business owner? So these are the sub-arguments. Choice creates benefits for ratepayers. They can choose the package that's best for them. We're open and accountable. That's a really big, important part of the story there. And also, our community reinvestment is purposeful, and it creates jobs across the region, but also specifically within communities of concern and EJ communities. So that's a big part of this as well. So what we're not going to go through today, but we've already kind of thought through and written out, is each of these four arguments has I don't know, 5 or 6 different proof points that are like single statements, single sound bites or talking points that we would deploy as needed. So that's customer driven choice. Next, we talk about the fact that SDCP is future focused. So, you know, we are sourcing and providing cleaner energy. We are the first CCA to put in our JPA that we're going to get to 100% renewable energy by 2035 or sooner, right? This is a big one. Obviously, we're allowing member cities and the businesses to reach their own climate action goals. So we are a tool for where they need to go as well. And overall, we're building healthier communities today and for the future. Next up, pragmatic and proven. So we have, you know, it was funny. I was speaking to someone earlier today about the fact that we have a lot going for us in that CCAs work. We know they work. We've seen them working for 10 years now. Thank goodness we're not the first one because we'd be having a different conversation right now. But the idea that they're not new and that they're succeeding across California as well as the country, there's a really strong jobs message here, clean tech and the rapid expansion of that sector. The notion that ratepayers can choose, and this is a pragmatic choice, like by choosing to save money, you're also helping the environment. And it's tough to come back against that argument. And then finally, overall, we're community and economic vitality is a plus there. And then finally, the last quadrant here, it's a neighborhood not-for-profit. It's never taxpayer funded. You are getting energy, you're getting a utility with a social good component. So there's a lot of people that argument will appeal to. And then finally, SDCP is run locally. It's a community-focused provider, and we're accountable to the community. We're not making decisions based on some corporate holding company, or I'm going to fill in the blanks for what I'm referencing here. But we are driven by decisions that are local in nature. Okay, so if we start to pull back again, now you can kind of understand all these layers of the onion. Where if we go to the next slide, we're coming back and saying, okay, this is, you know, you can start to see an argument here. And again, none of this should feel new to this team because you've been living and breathing this for years, and I know staff is so appreciative of that. But what we find helpful is structuring it in this way and providing that to you so that you'll have your rundown in front of you, right? We're going to arm you with materials like fact sheets and FAQs and items like that that touch on all these main arguments so that you don't have to operate off of memory. It should be a much easier process for you to answer questions and to make the arguments on behalf of clean energy among the folks that you encounter. I think that's it for messaging. Now we'll go into brand identity. So the process of building a logo I talked before is a very linear process. And what we started with was the overall direction that we need to educate constituents about clean energy and spark that sense of collective pride for the difference that we can make as a community. I believe we put this line in front of you last time, or you helped contribute to it. What we took that next step on is we did those brand attributes. If you remember that exercise from last month, and that's on the next slide here. These are the 5 words that if our logo does not reflect this, then we have failed, right? So this is what we measured ourselves up against as we built this out. And I hope that what you see in a few slides here will echo these: proud, trustworthy, fresh, local, visionary. So we had our attributes, we have our direction, we do some competitive research. So on the next slide, you're going to see a lot of times what we like to do is look at logo concepts and identities in black and white, because that's where you can really isolate the concept or the meaning behind it without getting distracted by the color. So what we're looking at here is, okay, there's a lot of CCAs out there. These are all California-based CCAs. What commonalities do we see? I see a lot of suns, I see leaves, I see light bulbs. Oh, sorry. Say something? Okay. That makes complete sense because we're talking about clean energy coming from nature. That's not to say that observing this means that we need to live within that construct. It doesn't mean that we need to be outside of it, but it definitely sparked a conversation between us and the SDCP staff to think through what road do we want to carve for this organization, and then what do we want to stand for. So now on the next slide, we take those same logos and we apply color. So here's where the sea of sameness really comes in. It's clean energy, surprise, surprise. There's a lot of green and there's a lot of blue, right? So that's all pretty expected. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, but we want to think about that, and we want to think about, okay, what is different and unique about this market, Southern California, our 5 member cities, and what makes them special. So we take all this information together, we take the direction, we take the brand attributes, we look at all our competitive research, and now we actually get into the logo itself. I skipped a stage. Look at that. I skipped the mood boards. I skipped an important stage. So what we then presented to the SDCP team were a series of mood boards that are basically, think of them as like inspiration. What's the overall tone of what we're going to design, what we want to represent? We presented 4, I think, mood boards to staff, and this one was called Form Follows Function. So in terms of design principles, the idea is you use minimal possible complication to achieve your purpose. So this is a simple, minimalistic direction. And both here and on the next slide, you'll see simple shapes, straightforward colors. There's a sense of confidence that comes from simplicity. If you look at some of the most beloved consumer brands in the world out there, like your Apples or things like that, it's very simple. And that doesn't mean it's stark. It can still be warm, but if one of the things we want to get across is confidence and competence, then why don't we model ourselves around modern consumer brands that can state that with absolute confidence? And we liked that, and the staff liked that as well. Now we're getting to logo concepts. So we took our mood boards and we presented, I think we presented 3 or 4 different logo concepts. We left a dozen or so, on the cutting room floor at Civilian, and where we landed, which we'll show right here. San Diego Community Power. So a couple words on this logo as you see it. You're seeing it in black and white right now. There is a color version that's on the next slide. What does this represent? What's funny is when we had the presentation with the board a couple weeks ago, there were a lot of different takeaways from this. There's circles. Is that a sun? Is that a dial? What is it? What's interesting about these types of conceptual logos is everyone, you tend to embrace it and create your own story behind it, and that becomes your story for the logo. So we understand there's a degree of uncertainty there, but to us, we think about energy and we think about how we're building things in the future. You see what looks like a battery being charged or a gauge being revved up. I saw a speedometer being revved up when I first saw it. And you'll notice the fuel cells or sort of the indicators, there's 5 of them. And there are 5 founding member cities of San Diego Community Power that are all coming together to create energy. They're coming together to create something that's larger than the individual parts. We talked about hierarchy of the typography. We know that we have 5 member cities and that we want to give everyone the equal measures of love in the logo itself. So Community Power is shining here. And I know that staff and the folks that were involved in it were really specific about using those words, community and power. And that was one of the first things that you all decided to represent not just tactically what you are, but why you are. So we wanted to make sure we celebrated those 2 words, community power, in very bold, very straightforward letters. Let's look at the next slide where we apply color. So this is where it gets fun. This is where we're looking at colors that we actually got from each of the member cities. There are nods to these colors within each of the member cities. And again, this is that notion of, this is five groups coming together to create one thing that we can all be proud of and that we can work toward in the future. There in the future will be versions of this logo. There will be city versions. There will be just alternate versions out there that are each indicative and specific to the cities. And we're excited to roll it out.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Which
color represents which city?
I have that in a slide somewhere. It's not in front of me right now, but I can. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, actually, at the board meeting, I think you got some pushback on some of the elements of it. Was there any kind of resolution, I guess? I like it fine myself.
It's funny, the conversation, I think, landed in a place where we were comfortable with where the logo was. Just so the group knows, one of the board members had asked if there would be anything. I think he asked for a wave because he's a beach city. And a lot of the thought that went into this logo and why we went something that was more conceptual versus more literal was, once you add in a wave, then you have to add in a sun, and then you have to add in the earth and all the different areas where the energy is being sourced from. And also you take into consideration the fact that there are 5 cities. I live in La Mesa. I'm a La Mesan. So, if there's no mountain, if there's no jewel of the hill, then I'm not represented there. So we like the idea of pulling back and being a little bit more conceptual with it. And I think we got around to it on that. The other questions that were posed there definitely was an urge to get some kind of natural fauna and energy in there. And what we decided to do was, as we roll out the entire brand system and things like the website and brochures, that natural photography will absolutely play a role in there. So we thought, let's use other elements to speak to like the natural side of it. The core logo has a different role for us. And then the last question they did ask was the city versioning. So if you can picture this logo with a bar below the word power, and then below that it might say City of Encinitas, City of Imperial Beach, City of La Mesa, City of San Diego, and then it'll be versioned to that color. So we've got that covered in the future. I think what we want to do is, as we roll this out, we want to be careful about what we're introducing into market immediately, because we want to have like a nice honeymoon period where this logo at the corporate level is the only one that's in market, so that we're starting to create some kind of traction and some kind of awareness of it. And then as the cities start to embrace it and do their own communications for it, they'll have versions that are still clearly within this brand family, but tailored to their city.
If I can mention something that I personally like about this logo. So as many of you saw, and as Sean mentioned, that the other CCAs focus a lot on suns, on windmills, on water, etc. But one thing that we all want to move away from is our reliance on natural gas. And I think by showing these batteries and how they can play a key role in being our base power when the sun stops shining and when the wind stops blowing, no other CCA has that. And that's what really stuck out to me at first was that future focus, that we're really focusing on moving away from these fossil fuels by our target date of 2030 for Encinitas and Imperial Beach, and for 2035 for the other member cities. So just wanted to share that perspective that I also have.
Thank you.
I don't have a comment on the logo, and I also don't think that the community advisory committee here is going to sway anything about it. So, I mean, I think it's great. I think you guys have done a great job of taking a lot of ideas into one, and you have a big, sorry, my connection is unstable. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was on my end.
I'm wondering if we can go back messaging pillars that I was hoping.
We could definitely go back to messaging.
Okay, apologies, we have a school. Okay, thank you.
You may want to turn off your camera. I hope you're
Actually, if you want to go all the way back. Oh, is that helping at all, or?
I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry, we have a school pod happening in my house right now, so I'm outside and sometimes the connection's not fantastic. Thank you for rolling back. So I think that I'm a little bit wanting to question and just understand the choice of the terminology neighborhood not-for-profit. Just as, you know, kind of an outsider to this exercise, and I know you took a lot of things into account with this. To me, it conflicts a little bit with the pragmatic and proven, and it feels kind of like if you know, because it just says a neighborhood not-for-profit, it doesn't give that sense of a conglomerate of neighborhoods, right? Like a coalition of you know, something that is spread across, you know, this region, empowered by the neighborhoods, but not necessarily, you know, to me that just struck me when I first saw it, and continued to see it on the slides, where it just felt like a weak position, in my opinion.
That's good feedback. Kim, obviously feel free to jump in on any thoughts you have there. I think that's a good point, that if taken the wrong way, this wasn't about creating kind of a mom and pop shop atmosphere. But I think what we wanted to get out of neighborhood was that it, more than anything, local control, local influence, and not in some ivory tower in Sacramento was kind of the idea there. But I definitely defer to Kim.
Yeah, I mean, my response would be that's great feedback and definitely something that we'll take a look at adjusting.
Yeah, and I know that this is also potentially an internal, structure for the messaging, which I thought you guys did a fantastic job with, hitting all of the pillars that need to be addressed. It's a huge thing. That's my biggest concern, I think, with the outward messaging is just becoming, too mom and pop. And then my only other question around this is, are we in a position, I know that there's, a lot of dealings with SDG&E at the moment, but are we in a position to position this brand as the other option? I know that we talk about choice in a more broad sense of it's great to have choice. But in my conversations with the community and people around this, the biggest selling point or the biggest hook for people is like, you don't have to use SDG&E anymore. So I know that I'm just curious what we're allowed to, how we're allowed to because of the situation.
I'll give it a first shot, and thank you, Jen. I think that's amazing feedback, and I know that a big selling point is not being with SDG&E. So thank you for that reminder. What I wanted to mention again, and what I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting is, I'm going to move forward with scheduling more individual meetings with you all, so we can get more of a deep dive into this messaging, and to really nerd out into all of this, which I'm sure you'll be excited for, and me as well. So we'll definitely have an opportunity to provide that, but definitely agree on bringing that talking point forward.
Yeah, and one thing I'll just respond to that as well is I think it's important on how we articulate that point to Jen's comment that we're not asking people to make a choice. We are giving them the power of choice, and it's basically in a lot of ways it's having a say, having some sort of ability to power and control the decisions that are made. You are electing the local leaders who are controlling your energy, versus having it be something that just shows up in your checking account as a bill and you find out after the fact. So I think maybe there's a way for us, whether it's at this level or a little bit deeper, to look at how we're articulating that I think the more we can focus on choice and not a choice. And it's funny, we actually just sat through a really interesting landscape analysis from another consultant agency that's working with SDCP yesterday, and they've been doing a lot of research on how you thread that needle when you have default. But this is a default situation. People are default going to be opted in, and they have a choice that they can make. Or if we can position it as the empowerment of the choice they're getting because this CCA exists, then they're less likely to pick a different direction. So it's a really good point. I think what we probably want to do is have that one level deeper conversation that Sebastian teed up to really kind of dig in on that and make sure that we're using the right words.
If I may, I'd like to
Apologies
go.
for getting ahead of you.
Okay. If going back to Jen's first point about neighborhood not-for-profit, I remember from the exercise we did of finding phrases, picking phrases that we thought described what we're trying to do here. The term good neighbor and things associated with neighbors and neighborhood came up a lot. So my simple statement would be changing it to local not-for-profit would kind of take us away from what was discovered in that original messaging exercise, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think the goal is definitely to capture all of that, but to also be able to play to those nuances, because I think, Jen makes a good point of, the sense of size and scope, but also the fact that, letting your neighbors know we're not going to let the electricity go off because we live next door and that's our electricity as well. So, Sean mentioned threading the needle, and we got to do that in a number of places. So we'll definitely keep both sides of that in mind when we update.
I have a question. My hand's raised. I wondered, Sean, if we're going to incorporate any kind of tagline into the logo, which would be a really good secondary way of hitting our brand immediately, hitting the message immediately.
It's interesting that you asked that. Insider Baseball is, we actually explored that and we presented a few options, and we had a couple that we liked, but what it came down to is when you look at a first impression, they actually detracted from the simplicity and power of San Diego Community Power. I mean, one thing you have going for you is your business is in your name in so many ways. And a lot of brands don't have that, right? Like if it's a more kind of conceptual brand name, if your name is Tesla, like what the heck are we actually talking about, right? San Diego Community Power is very simple and very straightforward. It kind of got, and actually, Sebastian, I'd love to hear your weigh in on this as well, because you obviously were a big factor in the decision, but we decided that the options that we put in front of them just didn't add enough to warrant an additional layer. I think a lot of the lines that we came up with would be really great headlines and stuff that we're going to run, but they didn't necessarily feel like they were adding to that first, when you make impression as a brand, when you drive by a billboard, that's all you get. You get, a first knee-jerk visceral reaction from people. And we wanted, if we were going to do a tagline, that it really had to add something that the name and the logo are missing. And we didn't think that there was anything missing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to carry that forward, we were also looking at whether that tagline could be easily translated into different languages, and that contributed to that decision for now. I want to emphasize as well that building the SDCP, the San Diego Community Power brand, is, I think, important for all of us. But that doesn't mean that later down the road we can't add a tagline. And so we're going to think about it. We're going to see what makes sense, what's easily translatable. Because I think we had one, and then I said it in my mind in Spanish, and it was way too long. So yeah, there were these series of things, but it doesn't mean we can't have one in the future.
I think one thing I'd also throw out there is when we get into, I think, probably mid next year, we're going to be doing some consumer research, some surveys, and that would be a really good opportunity for us to get a sense as to, okay, what level of awareness is out there, and are people at all confused or unclear or unengaged with us based on the name and the brand as it stands right now? And Sebastian's point is well taken. We're building out a brand. Brands evolve over time. These are our rules. We're writing them together. So if we decide that it is lacking, we want to add a tagline in the future, there's nothing against that. Vice Chair?
So I actually was in the queue to suggest the same thing. I was going to recommend a tagline at the beginning when we're using just this one logo, and then once people know what it is, drop that and switch it to the cities. I do have concerns that people aren't going to realize San Diego Community Power is your alternative energy provider. San Diego is very saturated with different solar companies, and the word power and community power, people might think community solar, community. I don't know how instinctual it will be for someone to look at this logo and understand this is it. But I do understand your feedback about why it was excluded, and maybe some focus groups prior to launch will help guide other decisions.
Yeah, so we'll do some consumer research, and then I also think the other thing is it's hard to keep in mind, because if you're staring at a logo on a PowerPoint slide, you're looking at it in an environment where it will almost never appear, right? Usually it'll be in the context of, if not, even if it's a billboard, it's in some sort of messaging. There's a headline there, there's copy, it's a print ad, it's a brochure. But I think it's valid feedback, and we want to keep an eye on that.
One more thing on that. Have you reached out to other CCEs who have launched and have maybe had high opt-out rates, and see what their customers, their feeling was? So I have family and friends in Northern California, and I've seen on Facebook people confused about their electric bill, and they truly don't understand what it is. And so that's my fear, is that that lack of understanding of what this program is and why it's beneficial.
That's really, I mean, not funny, but because we want to decrease opt-outs, but it's interesting you mentioned that, because exactly yesterday I was talking to Sean and Katie about really making sure that we are as articulate as possible on all fronts besides the logo to describe what our bill looks like, and that we're not an add-on charge to the SDG&E bill, that we're replacing the electricity generation. And I think that is crucial, because we've gotten research from Sea Change where you've mentioned that a good amount of opt-outs are on misunderstanding of the bill. So I think this group will be critical in making sure that our residential phase launch is as smooth as possible. So thank you, Tara.
I would like to agree with that as well. When I worked for Cincinnati Bell Telephone and the and Lucent Technologies, when I guess it was deregulation and happened, then other people could come in, and where they really hit us up by taking customers away was on the simplicity of their billing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I wanted to make a comment about this as well. So because I'm very concerned about this, and it's an extra challenge because materials are going to go out, even if it's not the residential rollout, materials are going to go out to people without anyone being there. So they're going to look at the website, they're going to see the materials, and in the past, we can gauge how things are going because we're talking about it. We're presenting something at a meeting, a real one, or even a Zoom meeting. So I Googled clean energy this morning, and I got a couple things. I just want to get a big picture because that's what people are going to do. And I saw lots of references to clean energy, and I saw the word renewable a couple times. So I'm really glad to see that on the screen, but I saw no reference to electricity. And so I think on our, the very first letter that goes out to anybody and the web page at the very beginning, the very first page, and pretty much everywhere, we have to make sure people know this is about, we buy and sell renewable electricity. And so that's and I think it's great. I think it goes along great with everything that we're doing, and we're perfectly set up to, go in that direction. So, so thank you. And I agree. I think everyone else has the same idea.
One of the things that we take pretty seriously when we do our website builds, to your feedback right there, is we look at all the keywords that we bake into every page of the website so that when people are doing some Googling, because let's be honest, I mean, this is a really complicated category that people don't understand, and a lot of them don't deign to understand. They're not even interested in it. But if they do end up Googling something, we want to get them to the not just our website, but the right page on our website. So we'll do a lot of effort on our keyword strategy so that Google can connect people to certain pages that make most sense for what they're searching for. There will also likely be a segment of our paid advertising campaign that's search engine marketing. So we will be serving up specific messages to people based on what they're searching for, and actually doing some paid advertising to make sure they have that right information, whether it's the business or the residential consumers. So that's definitely a critical part of this.
I ask a question.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. First, I wanted to ask: did the board approve the logo at its last meeting? Okay. So, did you want any further input on the logo, or is it pretty much set?
I mean, it is an approved logo, but we're always, I mean, this group's here to provide feedback.
Okay. And I come from the environmental community, and one of the things that we hear most often from Sempra and the energy companies is that solar and wind is not reliable energy. And I really think the word reliable or reliability needs to be somewhere in the messaging.
All right. Yeah, that comes down to competence and credibility, right? If we're not going to actually deliver the energy, if people are going to be experiencing rolling blackouts, then that's not an effective choice for them. Good, thank you. I don't know if Sebastian, do we want to keep moving?
I think that's it for comments and questions. Chair Price, I think you're muted. Still muted.
Y'all didn't hear all that profound stuff I just said? Give me the crickets. Okay, so I'm sorry, I was multitasking. Where are we at right now?
We just finished with the comments from everybody on this item. Just turning it over back to you.
Okay. So let me find my agenda again. So now we're at so we did number 9. Did we do number 9? No, we didn't. So we're at number 9.
Yes.
Provide input on community member communications guide.
And I'll kick that one off, if you don't mind. Let me go ahead and stop sharing so I can pull up the PDF. Let's see here. Okay. All righty. Before I turn it over to Civilian, I just wanted to say a few words about this. So, this item is before you, thanks to one of your fellow CAC members, Gary Johns. He brought this forward a few months ago, which we incorporated into your work plan. And we are planning to complete this by the end of the year. So that means that today we're gathering your input, again, your feedback on what you see here, if you have any questions, anything to add. And we do want to come back to you with a more complete version for your approval. So please, after this meeting, if you come up with any other input or questions that you want to provide, please email me and Kim and Sean so we can incorporate those moving forward. I'll stop right there and turn it over to, is Kim presenting?
I am.
Perfect.
All right, so as Sebastian said, this is a first draft, and the goal really is to just sort of create a little bit more formalized path and how-tos and channels so that we can facilitate two-way information sharing, gathering your feedback from the field, and then also providing information to you to take back out as our ambassadors. So the first section that we're looking at is basically information coming from us to you and the community. And we've established a couple channels we think that would be helpful in this. First thing is, I'm sure we have it, but just making sure that we have a separate database that has all of your correct information on how to reach you, email addresses, phone numbers. The first thing that we will do anytime that there's an update or news will be to reach out to that group. So just making sure that you are signed up and that you keep us updated so that you automatically receive those updates when we have news or materials. And then as part of the website that we are updating right now, we are going to create a partner landing page where we can post news as well as digital toolkits. So anytime we have a launch, we'll put up logos and flyers and social media content and all sorts of background information that you can then pull down and use in your communications however you see fit, whether that be reposting and tweeting, or if you have newsletters that you can put blog articles in, Basically, that will be a central hub for you to be able to pull down information from us and use it in your outreach. We also then are looking at how to get information back from you, and want to do that sort of in a couple ways. I think the thing we're going to focus on is a Google Drive. Everybody will have access to that, that shared information. It'll be online 24/7. And we're going to create 4 different documents that you can use to send us information and that we will look at on a weekly basis, basically. So the first one is information or materials requests. So it'll just be a form that you can send to us to say, hey, I mean, obviously you'll have the logo, but I'm going to this event, I need this artwork, or I need this graphic, or I need these facts updated. Anything that you need, those information requests can come to us. Then we know that you will be out and getting requests to speak at or sponsor community events. We talked a little bit about that earlier. But basically we'll create a pretty simple form so that you can either ask the chair to speak, or if you want an internal spokesperson from SDCP to come speak, it'll just get us some information, date, time, who, what, where type stuff so that we can facilitate that on your behalf. And then the third one is going to be really an open forum Word document where we would love for you to just drop in anything. I was at this meeting today and you know, SDG&E showed up, or someone from the union showed up and they said this, and we need to make sure that we address that, or any of the other opposition messaging, or when you see them speaking at an event where you think that we should have a presence, or you know, any of the things that we need to be monitoring from a competitive standpoint, as well as social posts that are getting a lot of traction. We of course are monitoring, but we aren't going to see everything. So this would be your place to be our eyes and ears in the community and just say, hey, we need you to take a look at this. We are going to pull that down on a monthly basis, and we'll turn it into a standing agenda item for anything that rises to the top that we need to talk about. But we will also be looking at that on a weekly basis just to make sure that we stay on top of everything that's happening in the market. And then finally, identification of community needs. So this is more of a way to provide operational feedback, whether this be around community grants or really just things that you're hearing from community members, maybe some more long-term planning items that you would like the team to think about. This is a place to go ahead and sort of just document any unmet community needs that could be applicable to future planning. That's kind of a lot, but those will all be up there and hopefully be turnkey. They're going to be accessible 24/7. So that will always be there for you to be able to just provide information so that you don't need to remember to write it down and bring it up at the next meeting. But hopefully we'll make things really easy for you to sort of provide that information as well as get information from us. And then we do also want to make sure, we will make sure that your information is up on all of the city websites. So that people know who to come to ask questions if city residents have questions. So we'll get that up. And then also know that you will have a few other tools. We are creating the messaging, obviously you saw today. When that is complete, that will be sent out to everybody. We will be creating talking points that will have our approved messaging. That way we ensure that everybody's using the same language in the market and really creating a surround sound. As we know, people need to hear things a few times before it sinks in. So if we are all saying the same thing, we can be a lot more effective on that front. We do expect you to make them your own, but this gives us a playbook for all of us to speak with the same language. And then media and speaking requests, we definitely we based all this on your operating guidelines that are approved, but all of the requests you get for media comment should be funneled through us. We're going to create a news@sdcommunitypower.org email that you can send that to, which will send that to Civilian and to SDCP at the same time. So as you get any media requests, please forward those through that channel, and we will vet that and get back to you with any other needs or information. So those are initial thoughts. Definitely open to what works best for you. We understand that there are certainly things that you're just going to shoot off a quick email to Sebastian as well, and definitely don't stop doing that. But for some of the things that maybe don't need to be handled in the next few hours, hopefully this creates some easy ways for us to share information.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Chair Pice.
I'm sorry.
No worries. I see Gary and Secretary Webb have their hands raised.
So now we're moving on to workforce policy.
Two questions about this. Mhm.
Any questions about what we just heard?
Yes, I have a question, but I think Gary's hand was raised before mine, so go ahead.
And I want to apologize to Anna because on the previous item, I kind of jumped ahead without doing the hand raising thing, which I'd forgotten about. I've been doing a lot of Zooms, but not almost none of them use the hand raising thing. So this time I did raise my hand, and Anna's correct. I did raise it before she did. I have a number of comments. So I think what I'll do, I have two very specific ones about, or just a clarifications, and then maybe I'll let Anna ask her things. And then I have sort of I want to cover something that I don't think is quite there yet in terms of an addition. So let me just take my two specifics. First, in terms of the, I just want to clarify, in terms of the partner landing page and toolkits, and it's part of the website, but I assume that this is going to have restricted access to just we who are working for SDCP, at least voluntarily, and not the general public. Is that right?
The partner landing page and toolkits will be a part of the media resources on the website. So as to that end, it will be completely open to anyone who wants to look at it. And
Okay.
It will be completely approved documents. We will only be sending the link to the Google document for the feedback tracking to this group, but we will also be vetting all of this through the lawyers and everybody else to make sure that we are, protecting information, but also being transparent and open as we are required.
Good. My second point is on the Google Drive itself. You've got the 4 documents there. I'm just wondering if this will be, if you envision freedom, I'll say, to add other documents besides the 4 if they somehow don't fit in any of the categories.
Absolutely. Yep,
Okay.
This is designed for you. So we're open to adding now or at any time. Once we start using it, if it's for any reason, taking too much time or anything, we can adjust whenever you need it.
Great. Well, I'm going to yield to Anna now, and then I'd like to come back to the possible addition I'd like to discuss.
Thanks, Gary. I just had a quick question. When we do the rollout to the communities, is it planned to have a social media blitz available? Will there just be one main Facebook page for SDCP, or will each community get also their own Facebook page to share out to and gain as a better way to engage the community?
I mean, I can answer as it relates to this document. I know we're still planning. We certainly want to go as broad as possible, and all of those materials, social materials that will be on the partner landing page can be used by the cities as well as all of our other partner organizations, environmental organizations will be reaching out to a wide group of people. Specifically to how that's going to roll out, I think Sean and I are probably, and the social team are probably still in the process of figuring out those details, but the answer is we're going to want to be as broad as possible. So I would imagine we'll be creating a range of tools.
Yeah, in terms of actual pages themselves, we still have to figure that out, to be honest with you, because you want to balance reaching as many people as possible through a single kind of centralized location, but also not missing out on folks because of it. So the social strategy actually, and Sebastian's been asking about it recently because I know you all are curious about it. So that's like the next thing we're going to address is building out a point of view and kind of our own parameters and roadmap for how we want to work in the social space.
Okay, will we be able to provide input for that?
Always.
Okay, thank you.
Gary?
Thank you. Well, and thank you, Anna. You anticipated actually what I really wanted to dive into here, and which is I'm very interested in how we're going to do social media. And I thought of this based on 2 points. And the first point is personal separation. And I would like to have separate accounts from my personal ones. I could be accused of using my Twitter account to say very bad things about some candidates on the ballot this time, and I don't think it'd be good to be using the same Twitter account to promote SDCP, where I want to have some kind of neutrality as far as all the people in my community. And I honestly do want, neutrality with all the people in my community. So, and then the other thing I'm interested in, which I think Anna touched on, is what I would call uniformity. That are we going to use, let's say, our own email accounts, or can we get SDCP email accounts so that, again, this would be in keeping with my first concept of personal separation. So I guess I just want to see, I still want to understand if I'm going to have to open yet another Gmail account. If everybody's going to open a Gmail account, but they're going to, whatever they use for their username has, totally different looks for different committee members, et cetera. I'll just leave it at that and let you address this.
I think that's a good piece for us to put in our social strategy kind of scope of work, and a question that we need to answer. I definitely don't have a point of view on the spot for that, because I think that requires a thoughtful response. So we can get back to you on that as we present the social strategy. The one thing I will say off the top is I think the beauty of this coalition is the people that are providing the message. So I would be surprised if we came back and said that everybody should kind of create Twitter burner accounts for the sake of this. But you bring up some valid points. And I think we need to think that through, and I think we need to figure out the right way to address that. Because the reason you all are involved in this is because you're committed to it, and we don't want to lose that equity, that capital in the communities. But at the same time, I mean, again, like I said, you bring up valid points.
Okay, I'll stand by.
Okay. Any more questions on this item? So I guess we'll move to number 10 now. Sebastian, can you bring up number 10?
Yes, Chair. I'll kick it off. Thank you. So if you all may recall, I believe it was last month. The months are too long nowadays. Last month, we brought forward an initial outline of what would be our inclusive and sustainable workforce policy. You all provided input on what this outline should look like. And staff was instructed to come back with a more veggie meat on the bones. I have to say veggie because I'm veggie. But here's what we have today. What we want you all to do is to review this document. I can answer any questions I can, and then we are asking for a vote to recommend this version or any amendments that you may want to provide to the board. And so you're aware of the process. Staff is bringing this forward to our 2 committees. So we're bringing this forward obviously to you, and then we're gonna bring forward this policy to our Finance and Risk Management Committee in early November. So we are trying to get as many eyes as possible because this is an important policy, and here here's where we're at. So I'll leave it right here and see if there are any questions or comments from you all.
Is there, and can you point me to where it includes or doesn't include union work?
Right. This policy is similar to the one adopted by Clean Energy Alliance. The reference to union the only reference to union that we have right now is at the bottom, which is our union neutrality pledge. Beyond that, we have included what you may describe as union-friendly language. We have our prevailing wage sections, which are part of our JPA that was carried over from our foundational documents. But in terms of union-specific chair, it's only here the union neutrality pledge.
So I need to keep wearing my bulletproof vest is what you're telling me. Okay. I do have a question up at the top where it's talking about something. This ain't it. Where it says disadvantaged and minority communities of concern. That's rather redundant, isn't it? In the first paragraph.
Yeah, right there. I believe I just highlighted it for you. So let me.
First paragraph under purpose.
Oh.
Where it says regional disadvantaged and underrepresented communities of concern.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That sounds to me redundant.
I can verify this, but I believe that the language is exactly the same as what is in the JPA agreement itself. I think we carried the language over. I can take a quick look and verify it, but I think that's the reason that it's phrased that way.
Okay, so what you're telling me is it was redundant there also. Okay.
What we could do, Chair, is we can revise this wording. Would it make more sense to you to include diverse and minority communities in lieu of this section?
No, it was just, to me, and you know, I'm not always right. I was wrong, I think one time back in 1974, but it just looks redundant to me.
Got it.
But maybe that's because I promote the use of communities of concern to replace disadvantaged and underrepresented and minority.
Got it.
It's been a while since I've done some work here, but my recollection used to be disadvantage would refer specifically to the sort of the more technical or even legal classification. Disadvantaged business enterprises, whatever was certificated or certified and utilized by jurisdictions. And then the catch-all, underrepresented, just tried to include all others that may not have a particular certification. Or at least that's how the terminology used to be a decade ago or so, sort of bandied about.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
How about disadvantaged and other communities of concern?
All communities of concern are disadvantaged, but I don't know. It just seems redundant. Because right, you know, and I get in these conversations extremely. Disadvantaged and underrepresented have become economic terms with the state of California, and a lot of funding is based on those two words right there, right? Which are, for me, derogatory to my community. And communities of concern kind of is in my humble opinion, is the new catch-all for all those derogatory terms. That's just my humble opinion.
If I may.
I took a look. Sorry.
I just wanted to make a friendly suggestion. So at the time when our JPA was formed, we included the word communities of concern there to be acknowledging of the communities asked. But we are currently working with member city staff to develop an STCP definition for communities of concern. What I may suggest in the meantime is that we replace that wording from the purpose section that you highlight, that it's highlighted, and that we include diversity and minority communities with the intention that staff will return with a proposed communities of concern definition. And we don't want to rush through that work, but we're working to make sure that we can find communities of concern communities and Encinitas, which, as you know, typically doesn't have.
No, they got a trailer park up there somewhere. Nobody worried about.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, if this helps, my apologies for including this language here, but I think for now, if it sounds all right to you, is moving.
Yeah, I just wanted to point it out.
Okay. And I apologize, Nick. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. And I can confirm it is a carryover for the JPA agreement, but I think the point is well taken, that there's confusion on the terminology, and they're not defined in the JPA agreement either. So it is some complicated terminology.
Well, thank you for the conversation. I guess we can move along, Sebastian.
I believe Ed has a.
Oh, Ed Lopez has a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just one in particular. I'm trying to actually follow it on my own phone. But if you scroll down, Sebastian, 1B, Roman numeral 3, I think it is. No, 4. Okay, there. Collect information from vendors and developers, so and so, and then in the parentheses, C section 3, I guess that's sort of the reference to incorporate to the degree we must, whether the collection of information is voluntary or maybe outright mandatory. I think it's mainly voluntary, and without, I guess, being too explicit, we are essentially acknowledging that to the extent possible, if you will, we're trying to collect information, but it's not mandatory unless so provided by law.
That is correct. Under this particular section, CCAs are required to collect certain information from vendors on that. Where we do want to take it a step further, let me see here, is on asking the level of diversity within their staff. And I believe we have language included in here for that.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, no, I think my overall observation was I see the value and importance in doing it. And in fact, if it's legally required, that's it. But I don't think we needed to be overt about whether it's mandatory or voluntary, whatever. And my take it is the reference to the Public Utility Code section sort of covers us, and we can always cite as to what exactly, if any, would be required. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. So we're going to go back up to policy number 1, Sebastian.
there you have it.
Can you make that bigger, Sebastian?
Yeah.
I'm old, Sebastian. I know you got young, fresh eyes, but and Ed's trying to look at it on the phone, so you're gonna have to make it real big.
How is that?
There you go. There you go. Does it say, you know, on this workforce policy, does it mandate, and it doesn't look like it, reaching out to include a workforce? You know, does it include somehow reaching out to different cultural communities and other types of communities, and how that will be done, or what would that be done at? Because I've seen, you know, personally, I've seen workforce policies a lot that just, you know, it's in the book, but nobody really knows how to do it, and nobody really holds to it. And then you start hearing words like good faith effort. Well, we did a good faith effort, you know, to reach the Hispanic market in San Ysidro, but we couldn't find anybody. How the hell that work?
Yeah, so right now, under Roman numeral I, we have this wording here.
Okay.
As I was saying, this wording allows us to keep moving forward with this policy as we develop our SCCP definition of communities of concern. So we can certainly work with you, Chair, as we are moving forward with some outreach.
Yeah, I just, maybe my comment was premature, and it was geared towards the mechanics of this particular sentence, or the mechanics of this document. And I don't think we're at the place of establishing mechanics to actually fulfill this document. So I'll try to be quiet.
Well, no, this is great feedback. On the mechanics, we haven't developed those yet.
Right.
And we're happy to go over those once they, you know, we do develop those with you all. But like I said, I really wanted to include the communities of concern there as more of that defined area. But we want to make sure that we're doing it right. And like I said, we'll bring that forward hopefully sooner rather than later, so we can have more certainty on the type of outreach that we'll be doing.
Question, and maybe you can answer, what is your hiring schedule or your hiring agenda to actually start, you know, onboarding more people, and, you know, the levels that's going to go to?
I can't answer that beyond just Bill has been working on that. I do know that we're planning on bringing forward a staffing plan to the board of directors later this month. What that will entail, Bill and Cody have been doing that effort.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Can I make one suggestion?
Please.
So the energy field is very male dominated, and I was wondering, I think number one is great. I don't know if under SDCP staff, if we could add something about trying to equally recruit women, or something to include women recruitment as well.
I like that. So what we can do, if there are no other comments or questions, we can add, so for example, engage in broad outreach in diverse and minority communities, including outreach to women, or something like that. And that would be one amendment to this. The other one would be the one that I mentioned earlier, would be the replacement of the regional disadvantaged and underrepresented communities of concern with the diverse and minority communities. including women. Something along those lines. But as long as we have the same direction from you all, I think we can move forward.
Could we add in that section A as well, the term regardless of age?
Yeah, because I'm getting old. Yeah, make that bold too.
Well, no, seriously, of course I came from the tech field and but since, once you get over a certain age, they just toss your application goes in file 13.
Yeah, they start devaluing you.
If we're including age, should we then say regardless of age, sex, religion, like that?
That's listed later on. So, do we just leave that there, the non-discrimination pledge, and leave this paragraph alone? Or, I don't know. It's just throwing that in there because age is in the non-discrimination pledge, but, if we're making it forefront in the first paragraph, then I just ask that we put that in there too. But I know, so I think we might, I don't know. Never mind. That's all I have.
Well, actually, in reviewing the non-discrimination, it seems like it's specific to contractors. So maybe adding a phrase about hiring staff in that section D could fill that gap.
Let me go back. Got it. Okay. Yeah. What we could just do is just pretty much copy and paste what's included here for staff as well, and that sounds fine with me. I just want to make sure legalese it looks good to Nick as well.
Yeah, we can work on making this a broader and more reflective commitment and clarify the non-discrimination pledge.
It seems to me we're getting into a fair markup. I'm almost wondering if we could receive the document after this meeting is over and somehow approve it after the meeting. I know you want to have a motion and have a vote on it, but I think I'd kind of like to see it.
From a Brown Act perspective?
It was in our, because that's what I'm doing now. It was in our agenda packet that Sebastian sent out. And so I'm actually looking at it now on my other screen. I say all that to say we already have it. It's in our agenda pack. As a matter of fact, the whole presentation today was there. What Civilian did, what Erica did is all in our packet.
I guess my question is, are we going to vote to approve what was in the agenda packet, or are we going to reject it because we want to make these changes?
Yeah.
You could also recommend approval with changes that have been noted in the comments. I think unless there are objections to any of the particular comments or suggestions that have been made by a particular member, staff can note the comments and react to them in the next version that would go to the board. And therefore you'd be recommending this version with the changes that have been discussed. And then if you do have.
My problem is I haven't been able to follow where all the changes are going. I got the general drift, but there's also the issue of are these changes really what I thought they were going to be?
Well, I think this is like and I may be wrong, but this is like the first draft that we're approving with these changes that we've kind of been speaking about. Then it's going to go to the council, then it's going to do some stuff, then it's going to come back to us. Is that?
Well, I think this is the second, this is the first return to us. This is the second time we've seen it.
Right.
Right.
So my question is, this is going to happen again? Is it going to go to the board and then come back to us again?
It'll go to the board the way we're planning it. It'll go to the board for final approval, and we can bring it back to you all so you're aware of the changes that were made, if any. I don't know, and Nick, if you can weigh in on bringing this back via email. I think this would have to be during an open public meeting. Gary, and everyone correct me if I'm wrong, but the changes that have been suggested have been on adding more wording from the non-discrimination pledge into the type of outreach that staff will do to reach a diverse pool of applicants, as well as the change of from the top of regional disadvantaged and not underrepresented communities of concern to diverse and minority communities, with the intention of staff, coming back hopefully in the not too distant future with a proposed communities of concern definition after we've worked with member city staff. So if that helps, if not, I can elaborate further.
I think that would be sufficient. That was a very clear statement, so I'll go along with it.
Chair Price, if you're looking for a motion, I'm happy to make one.
Please, please, please.
So I move to approve the inclusive and sustainable workforce policy with the 3 minor modifications that Sebastian just referenced, which will be taken as we see it legally appropriate.
And Vice Chair, my apologies for interrupting. I do see Carolyn with her hand raised, as well as Tom just raised his hand virtually.
Yeah, sorry. I had another comment about the non-discrimination pledge. It seems to me that that applies to the document in general, and that should be written as a section of the document, because I think it applies to the entire document, not just to one section or 2 sections.
I believe that applies to contractors, Carolyn, and Nick can correct me if I'm wrong. And so it would be separate from SCCP hires staff.
Okay, I'm fine then. Thanks.
Okay, Sebastian, you said there was somebody else besides Carolyn?
Tom Summers.
Tom?
Yeah, I want to ask a question about item 2, sustainable workforce. I never noticed this before, but it occurs to me that bullet point 1, employ workers and use businesses from San Diego and Imperial County. Now I know we're weighted towards local, and local to me means from the 5 member cities. Is that in there just because of San Diego and Imperial County Labor Council, or is there something I'm missing?
Sorry. Great question, Tom. Again, this is suggested language that we're putting before you. What we put here could change based on your recommendation. If you do want to move away from Imperial County, I would encourage staying within San Diego County to provide a little bit more of a bigger pool. But again, this is for your input, for your recommendation. So please.
You know, I was thinking to Tom's point, and since this just says we'll encourage the submission, maybe it might be prudent to employ workers and use businesses from member cities of the JPA or something like that, so that they're encouraged to look first for this stuff within our member cities. They're encouraged to look that way, but it's not mandated that they have to do that.
Part of the reason for that is to provide the legal flexibility that that SDCP needs. There are in certain cases, SDCP can take into account a local business in making its procurement decisions, but it, for example, couldn't completely exclude non-local entities from trying to pursue an opportunity. So part of the reason for the use of encourage language not making something mandatory is that this policy is setting aspirations, but not making sure not to tie the agency's hands legally or conflict with state or federal law.
But it says encourage, so that's not like a, you know,
Not
I mean,
legally mandated.
yes. And so if you had like if a first bullet that was just with the local cities, then kept what is now the first bullet of San Diego and Imperial County as the second one, push everything down, it would just indicate a encouraging, first of all, businesses in our member cities, second of all, in the region, and then down the line.
Okay, but I'm not sure that we got to the intent of my question, which is, well, how did that find its way into our document? What was the thinking behind it? I do know that the San Diego and Imperial County Labor Council acts as a single entity in regards to union workers. And I was just wondering if that flies in the face of our union neutrality policies.
Tom, no, it was just no reference to that at all. It was just including the two counties, neighboring counties. But like I said, we're taking feedback from y'all and input. So if you want to, if I'm hearing correctly, prioritize member cities or just within San Diego County, I think we can include that.
Yeah, you know, and I'm just kind of thinking out loud. And I wonder also where that San Diego and Imperial County pre-apprenticeship programs are in here twice, because that is labor union centric, right? There is a San Diego Imperial County labor union, right? You know, I do appreciate the fact that it just says encourage and does not demand or say shall, because I've learned through all this that words somewhere make a big difference. But it is interesting that San Diego and Imperial County are in there, as opposed to the general counsel's point, just opening it up. You know, we start, or Gary's point, you know, we start with the member cities. We encourage people to work with the member cities. And the next level of encouragement is, you know, the region of San Diego. Then the third level is, you know, whoever can get in can fit in. But utilizing, in my humble opinion, San Diego and Imperial County apprenticeship programs is pretty specific to a certain group of people.
Yeah, well, it comes from the Labor Council, which is made up of trade unions and labor unions.
Right.
I think that this is just another opinion from me, but there are plenty of communities of concern and groups within our 5 member cities that we can draw from and encourage, love that word, without including that. But I do kind of understand where it comes from. I wanted to make sure I understood where it came from. You know, we've got other neighboring counties on our perimeter as well. So I was just looking for a little bit of background info on how that got in there.
I did have one comment, if I can. It says employ workers and use businesses from San Diego and Imperial County. So if we take the suggestion of the 5 member cities, I think that might become very, very difficult. It's easy if you say, yes, the business is in the 5 member cities, but if you're then looking at employees as the state, are you getting a list of addresses of every single company? And then are you calculating the percentage that live in those 5 member cities versus elsewhere? Because just because a contractor might be in the city of San Diego, they might be employing a lot of people from other areas. So just bringing up that might, I understand the intent, but it might be much more complicated than anticipated.
And I think once again, this speaks to the mechanics of this document, right? I mean, we're putting something in, and the question is, how is it going to be applied? You know what I mean? What is the process for applying what's in here? So, you know, I agree with everybody actually, which is incredible. I am concerned about just the San Diego Imperial County, but maybe that's just me in town. But if nobody has anything else to say, Vice Chair had a motion on the floor. Vice Chair, would you like to restate your motion from 45 minutes ago?
Oh, a memory test here. All right. I move to approve the inclusive and sustainable workforce policy with the amendments, the 3 amendments that Sebastian had referenced in regard to the disadvantaged and underrepresented language, as well as potentially adding women, make it more inclusive for the SDCP staff, and the inclusive business practice. Oh, sorry, no, the third I think was a non-discrimination pledge.
I would second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Sebastian, can you take the vote because you can see everybody?
Yes, sir. Give me 1 second.
These old guys are like.
Ed Lopez,
Yes.
Gary Johns,
Yes.
Carolyn Schofield,
Yes.
David Harris,
Yes.
Matthew Vasilakis,
Yes.
Jen Dirks,
Yes.
Tom Summers,
Yes.
Secretary Webb,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hammond,
Yes.
and Chair Price.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. All right. Let's see, let me stop sharing. And again.
Okay, item number 11. Are there any committee member announcements? Vice Chair?
I would like to recommend, Eddie, you mentioned the event on Monday regarding.
Oh, no, I didn't.
No, I'm recommending that you mention the event.
Oh, you're recommending that I recommend some stuff. Okay. I gotta find the flyer. Do you have the flyer at hand?
Maybe I don't know if it's too late to email it, Sebastian, but there's a great event NAACP San Diego is putting on, along with the San Diego Urban Sustainability Coalition and a couple other local organizations, from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. on Monday, talking about the franchise agreement. Councilmember Vivian Moreno will be there, and it's a great opportunity to learn more about this very, very important topic that will very much so influence San Diego community power.
I think you did an excellent job.
Okay, thank you.
You should speak for me more often, as a matter of fact, Tara.
But how, if people are interested, how do we let them know?
If they email me, I will then find the flyer and email it back to them.
Okay, it's also on the San Diego Climate Hub Facebook page.
Okay.
Perfect.
Sorry, which Facebook page? I've been taking notes.
At SD Climate Hub.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Just want to say congrats to Tara. I think you just hired your first employee. It's exciting.
Yay!
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Big step. I see Tom has his hand raised.
Yeah, one last comment from me, if you will. I have been utilizing Erica Morgan to school me on a lot of things, and she means what she said about anybody who wants to reach out to her individually. She will make an appointment with you and take time with you to help with your ongoing education about all this. We are CCA number 24 in California, so these people have been doing this for 10 years and they know a lot more about it than certainly people like me ever could get on their own. So take her at her word and reach out to her if you want to get up to speed on any particular aspect of this formation process. Thanks.
Oh, and I might add that I've been attending and reaching out to other chairs of other CCA's community advisory committees. And we're scheduled for a call, four of us next week sometime, just so I could get a better idea of, where their maturity level is at, what kind of issues are they talking about as opposed to what we're talking about, because they are where we're going. And it's been interesting. They're talking about some pretty deep stuff, which is a good thing. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm not just running this like I run my house. Anybody else? I don't see. Tom, your hand's still up?
Oh, sorry. But yeah, good point, Eddie. And I really, really appreciate being a part of this process. Hands going down as soon as I find the little thing. All right. I move we adjourn.
I'll second that.
There's no roll call for that.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Sebastian. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.